Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. And as Kathy mentioned, I'll be co-hosting with you this evening. Apologize, some of our trusted servants couldn't make it, so we're kind of a little behind on things. I did put and we'll put again the announcements in chat in a couple of minutes. But let's get to work. We are talking about to talk about more about alcoholism. Chapter 3. Um, you know, Step 2 states that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And if you're like me, I would, I was a little offended by that because I thought I am restored to sanity. As long as I'm not drinking or drugging, I'm as sane as anybody else. So why do I have to be restored to something I already am? Well, I didn't understand the definition of the term. You see, the word sanity, restored to sanity, is referring to sanity is the ability to recognize the truth, to see the truth in any given situation. So if I'm sane, I recognize the truth. If I'm insane, I make decisions based on lies. And that's where I need to be restored because the lie that I get in trouble with is when I tell myself I don't have that physical allergy and I make a decision based on the obsession that this time it'll be different. And I trigger the allergy, the craving, and I'm off to the races. The insanity that I thought they were talking about was really intoxication. I did a lot of crazy, stupid things when I was drinking and drugging, but not doing that anymore. But those things are intoxication. They're not insanity. And Bill sat down and he wrote this chapter. Joe and Charlie talk about the fact that he wrote it with one thing in mind, really, which is the insanity that precedes the first drink. In other words, the failure of self-will. In fact, I have that written down in the corner of the page about more about alcoholism, the title page, that it's about failure of self-will and insanity of the first drink. And Bill gives us a number of stories throughout this chapter. Fred, the man of 30, the jaywalker, our friend Jim. And in each of those stories, what we're going to try and do, Kathy's going to point out the point at which that person crossed the line when they went from acting and making decisions based on the truth to making a decision based on a lie. And then what happens to them? Obviously, we know because we've been through that. Let me put this up and then I'm going to turn it over to Kathy. Anyone want copies of any of these screen shares? Just drop us a line at thebigbookstudy@aol.com. But this is an overview of this chapter. Now, we have these 4 examples: the man of 30, Jim, the car salesman, Jay Walker, and Fred. And each one of them make a decision based on a lie, and the outcome is not good. We're going to go back to this sheet as we go through each of the individual stories, but just wanted to show you what we're talking about. And then I'm going to turn it over to Kathy and let her start the chapter.
Thanks.
Go right ahead.
Thank you for giving us the lowdown. My name is Kathy. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you guys for being here and welcome to anyone joining us for the first time. And we're still in step 1 and we're going to get to that actually where it tells us we're taking step 1 in the book in a couple of minutes. I was telling Howard earlier before the meeting that this is one of my, if not favorite chapters of the book. And reason being is because I was one of these characters. I was Fred. I was the man of 30. I can relate to trying to stay sober on self-will, on my own power. Hence why I'm here. It didn't work. And like Howard says, we get to look inside our mind before we take a drink. Like I get to look at the thought that precedes the first drink. And we look at it as well. I think you mentioned the 4 tests you can take it for in doubt, because this is a self-diagnosis illness. Um, because we really have to make that concession. If people tell us, whether it be the doctor, whether it is our partner, whether it's our friend, that you have a problem, you're an alcoholic, that's fine. But we have to concede to our innermost self that I'm a real alcoholic. It doesn't matter about the people on the outside. I have to get the truth within me. So let's begin. Most of us have been unwilling to admit, I beg your pardon, we were real alcoholics. And above real alcoholics, in my book, I've wrote allergy and obsession. Like, what is the real alcoholic? I have the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. So you could either write the full word, or, like, because there's so many times we're going to kind of stop and look at this word alcoholic, you could write A and O. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. So again, body is the allergy, mental is the obsession. And we deal with the body in the doctor's opinion, which is the 8 pages, up to page then in numerical order, page 23. And we deal with the mind from 23 to 43, just to break it down. So I mean, from my experience of when I was sister dated into Alcoholics Anonymous, the first time I got to a meeting, I did not know, you know, that I had major delusion and major denial. I was just doing what my sister told me to do because I didn't want to lose her, but I most certainly didn't think that I was bodily and mentally different than her, or the girls I dragged with, or the people I hung around with. Um, and so I was a long way from conceding to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic, because I couldn't see it. Um, and I don't want to be different than my fellows. I tried my whole life to feel like I fit in, and it goes on to tell us, it says, therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. So we have these drinking careers that pay no pension, no benefit. They just take everything from us. And eventually they take our lives. So um, and this for me explains why I continue to, try and try and try to drink like other people. I don't want to admit that I'm a real alcoholic, that I'm bodily and mentally different. And I try these different ways, or whatever, vain attempts, as it says, to prove I can drink like other people. And I laugh at that because people know I'm not, like, there's something up with her, but I'm so determined to prove I can drink like other people that I keep doing it, right? Because I'm insane, basically. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. And I have this highlighted. This is really important. Excuse me. So the idea comes from my mind again, and that is, untreated. Like, we hear things in the rooms like, oh, that's not a neighborhood you should go to alone. And I actually agree. When you haven't treated your illness, don't be there. Like, that's the worst place we can be. That's why we need a solution in our life. That's why we need to get well. But this idea that's in our mind, that somehow and someday I'll have both. I'll be able to control it and enjoy it. And that is the great obsession. We're going to see words like obsession, delusion, illusion. But this great obsession is that we can somehow control and enjoy our drinking. Somehow, someday. Sorry, I'm getting my words kind of minced here. So in other words, I think, that someday I'm going to be able to muster this up. It's going to be different. And that is the great obsession. And why do I keep doing it? Because I'm believing a lie constantly, constantly, constantly. And it says that is the great obsession. Like, how many of us have tried that? But it's also, I'm sure you guys have heard it in the meetings, is like, if I'm trying to control it, I'm out of control. If I'm not trying to control, what is it? I have it wrote down, because I'm going to mess it up. If I'm trying to control it, I'm not enjoying it.
Mhm.
And if I'm enjoying it, I'm not controlling it.
Yeah.
So yes, and we're going to look at words like obsession, and you can speak about that definition. You have a great one, Howard. And like I said, illusion, delusion. Do you want to give that definition of obsession?
Yeah. Well, as Kathy mentioned, in this paragraph, you have 3 words that you may want to circle: obsession, illusion, and insanity. In the next paragraph, the third line down has the word delusion. And if you look at those four words, what do they mean? Well, let's take the first one. Obsession means an idea so strong it can make you believe something that's not true. In other words, it's something that can make you believe in a lie. That's an obsession, a thought that's so strong it overcomes all things we know and makes us cross over into making decisions based on lies. Illusion is seeing something that's not true. We all know David Copperfield, the great illusionist. He made the Statue of Liberty disappear on TV. I saw it. It disappeared, but it's still in the East River and nobody took it away. But on TV, the illusion that was created was he made it disappear. So an illusion is seeing something that's not true. In other words, believing in a lie. Insanity, as I mentioned at the beginning, insanity is defined as belief in a lie. Sanity is recognition of the truth. Insanity is basing decisions on lies. And then the last word in the next paragraph that Kathy's going to get to is delusion. Delusion is convincing yourself of something that's not true. In other words, convincing yourself to believe in a lie. So we have in the first two paragraphs 4 examples of Bill trying to tell us something. Obsession, illusion, insanity, and delusion. In other words, we're going to be talking about things that make us believe in lies. And what happens? And the lie that we are talking about that's relevant to us as alcoholics who have the allergy and the obsession is when we tell ourselves we don't have the allergy.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So it goes on to say the persistence of this illusion, seeing something that's not
Mhm.
there. I've just wrote false belief is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. And I was doing this with a sponsee earlier, and it's a pretty strong 2 sentence. Like we just drive this illusion, delusion, whatever you want to call it, that we can somehow someday drink like a normal person into the gates of insanity or death, like insanity or death. And the fact that we're all here tonight, I like to say, is like there is a reason. God has a purpose for you. God has a purpose for you, because if not, we would be dead, because that's what it promises us. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. So I learned that, or you can personalize it too. I like to do that if you want. So we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves. Like, how did I learn that? So I look at this through my own experience, through my own drinking experience. I go back in that, but also in what I've read up to this point, the 8 pages in the doctor's opinion and these 30 pages in the text. Have I learned that I'm a real alcoholic? Do I identify, like, am I going in this book? Oh my gosh, that's me, that's me, that's me. Is it a mirror to me? Because non-alcoholics don't read this book and keep reading it, right? I don't think so. But concede, I love this definition from concede, and Howard is another definition too. This is just, I like it because it's real applicable to me because it's my experience. And it's to admit something is true after first denying or resisting it. My sister said, go to AA. Don't be drinking. It took me 4 years to get sober because I was unable to admit to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic, that I'm bodily and mentally different. Clearly, I didn't have the words for it. But the point I'm making is, oh, yeah, I resisted the truth for a very long time. Um, but we have to admit it to our innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. I've allergy of the body and the mental obsession. And it says this is the first step in recovery. And like I said a minute ago, like 30 pages plus 8 pages in the doctor's opinion. Like, and it's funny when we come into the rooms, and I've been like guilty of this too. Oh, I've did that step and I read it off the wall. And it's like, no, if you read them off the wall, you get off the wall sobriety. It's given me a lot of information to diagnose myself, and that's why I think it's so important when I get a new person, like they will say, "Oh, I know I'm an alcoholic," like that's okay, no problem. Like let's just go and read the book because we start from the start. We do things in order anyway. I think it's only been one time that I've had somebody say, we got to the doctor's opinion. They're like, I don't identify with this. And that was it. Over. I've never heard from that person again. Like, why would you want to stay here if you don't identify with this? Go and live your happy life. Although we'd love to have you, but why? And stay. Um, but Harry, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I I like to think that there should be some words added at the beginning of this paragraph because it says we learned that we had to fully concede. I think the words that need to be added at the beginning are we may not like it, but we had to fully
Yeah.
concede. And as Kathy mentioned, the word concede is important. If you listen in meetings, you'd think that the word is surrender because of how often it's used in meetings. Well, as many of you may know, the word surrender does not appear, not once, in the first 164 pages of this book. Nowhere in the first 164 pages, the recovery portion of our text, does the word recover, does the word surrender appear? The word that Bill uses in place of it is concede or concession. And the difference is concession is absolute, total, unconditional surrender. Germany surrendered after World War I, but they clearly had some resentments they needed to get rid of, and they took it out on a lot of people, including my people. And they finally conceded after World War II. Um, Surrender is a lighter form. Concession is absolute, total, unconditional surrender. Um, and it's interesting that Bill points out that this is the first step in recovery, the delusion that we're like other people, or presently may be. You may want to underline a presently may be because it means it comes back. The delusion that we can drink like other people has to be smashed because it can't be put back together again, because it does come back. So when he says that it presently may be is telling us beware. You think it's not there, but it can come back. So that's the first step in recovery. It has to be smashed. That's a must. Um, and from here on, we're going to get clear-cut directions from this admission about how we can recover. From this point on, we've conceded this. Now we're being given directions.
Yeah, thank you for going through concede. And I was just thinking of like what my sponsor said, like was like surrender is just the start. Surrender, like I know we're not using that word, and Howard described it as an unconditional surrender. Call it whatever you want. You know what it means, that concede concession, but it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. And this delusion, like you talked about, Howard, that convincing myself of something that's not true. Like somehow, someday, I'll be able to drink like the person that comes in after work and has two beers and goes home on the train. Somehow, someday, and I will keep doing it. And at the end, I wasn't drinking for effect. I was drinking because of the mental obsession, clearly. But um just continue to drink like this, um that I'm like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. And I love this because I ask sponsees and myself when I do it with them, like, do you presently think you're like other people? Like where you stand with this right now, right here, right now. Do you think you're like other people? Do you think you have a body that's like a normal drinker and a mind that's like a normal drinker? Like, do you have any reservations about this? And you know what? I will be honest. I had this about 3 years ago before I got married. And I was like, you know what? Like, if I ever get engaged or married, like, how am I going to like toast at a wedding? I had not met Howard. This came to me one day. I was out for a walk, but it started in and it started playing and it started playing. I remember taking the book out and reading this, and I'm like, oh, there's exactly what they're talking about. This thing has just reared its ugly head. And I spoke to my sponsor about it, and it was busted, like, because it's a delusion. Um, and it what was I trying to say? Like, we look like other people. We are people, right? We go to work, we go, and maybe we go to church, we hang out with our family. Whatever we do outside of Alcoholics Anonymous is pretty normal when we're sober, you know, but we are not like other people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we get our lives back, we do these things we need to do, and we're living in the world and everything's fine, but I'm not like another person. I'm bodily and mentally different. I'm an alcoholic. Um, we alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control their drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. And the key word here is lost. It's gone. It's like finito. Party is over. Like, and it's gonna give us it's gonna give us wording after this in these sentences that are far better than what I'm saying right now. Um, Okay, yes, sorry, I've lost my place. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. So again, I've lost the ability to control my drinking. If I'm trying to control it, I'm out of control. If I'm trying to enjoy, I always mess this up. If I'm trying to control it, I'm not enjoying it. And if I'm enjoying it, I'm out of control. But I can't have the two things together. And this is what we're talking about, that I've lost the ability to do that. I don't know when it happened. I don't know when I crossed the line. I don't even know if I ever drank like a normal person because of the effect alcohol had on me. But that's that. But I'll never be able to get it back. Like, it's gone. It's gone. Anything you want to say, Howard?
Well, one
Oh
thing,
wait, I never
oh,
I forgot that and there was times where it talks about here regaining control, but those intervals were brief, followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And like, I have a little note here, my last year of drinking, because that's what exactly it was. I had tried to stop. I had tried this. I had tried that. I went to I did the fourth step. I did the fifth step. I did the 12 steps. I wasn't sponsoring anyone. I did all these things that I needed to do. And I drank because I wasn't living in 12, 11, and 10. But the point I'm trying to make here is when I went back out, there was periods where I'm like, you know what, this wasn't as bad. I've had really bad drunks. Like, this is not that bad. But those times were very, very short-lived. And then all of a sudden, I go down like a bag of SH1T and I'm like, where did this come from? I thought I was regaining control. I thought I was getting better at being able to manage this whole deal. Um, which then leads me to this incomprehensible. So this unbelievable, this demoralization, confusion. Like, I can't even explain it, but we know what it's like when we wake up in the morning. We know what incomprehensible demoralization is like. Howard?
well, incomprehensible demoralization is such an incredible phrase, but you may have noticed there's a word that keeps being used over and over and over again on this page, and it's control. It's used 5 times alone on this page, let alone the rest of the pages. Um, Bill's trying to tell us something, but uh, over any period of time, we get worse, never better. Um, the most important word in that sentence, I think, is the word any, because it tells me that this is a progressive disease over any period of time, meaning whether I'm sober or not, the disease continues to progress. When we pick up after a period of sobriety, our body responds as if it has been using every one of the days that it wasn't. When I had my first relapse after 10 years in recovery, my body acted as if it had not stopped for 10 years. What I needed in frequency and dosage and so on was as if I'd been using and drinking every day of those 10 years that I was not. So over any period of time, whether I'm drinking or not, my disease is progressive. It's running alongside me. And even if I'm not drinking, at any time I decide to get out of my lane and into that other lane, I'm going to pick up as if I never stopped. And you may want to kind of make a note here. That's a promise, that last sentence. It's a grim promise. So I've got it highlighted in pink because that's the way I highlight promises. Over any period of time, we get worse, never better. Um, you may want to put a note there. See page 33. And let's jump to page 33 for just a moment. I hate to do this to Kathy, but it occurred to me as she was reading it. Over any period of time, we get worse, never better. If you turn to page 33, the first paragraph says, this case contains a powerful lesson. If you go down to the middle of the paragraph, you'll see the line, commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. So he's telling us that in the beginning, and he's restating it here just about the time he starts to introduce some of these stories. So again, over any period of time, it's a grim promise. I think that pretty much summarizes them. You're doing great. Go.
Um, So it talks here, like you were talking about, we are convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of progressive illness. And it talks about the types if we were like looking, paying attention up to this point, like we have the hopeless type, we have the type that doesn't respond to ordinary psychological approach. And then it goes into the doctor's opinion, talks about, the psychopath, the guy that's in denial, and so on and so forth. So we're talking about these types, like I am a hopeless type, like period, right? But it's telling me that I'm in the grip of progressive illness, and like again, reverting back to my sponsee earlier, we're talking about how this is not just like a problem, like, because when I was younger at home in Ireland, they didn't say alcoholic. They said things like a problem with the drink or drink problem. This is just not a drinking problem. This is a progressive illness that we have, a fatal progressive illness. And like we're going to learn, spoiler alert, that our drinking is just like a symptom, like just like if someone had cancer and they had a lump, the lump is a symptom of cancer, right? Drinking is but a symptom. Yes, and that's a grim promise. We get worse, never better. And like you were talking about, Howard, like um I've wrote down in my book as well, jails, institutions, and death. Like we either get locked up, covered up, or sobered up. Like that's what this promise is,
I like that.
Those, yeah, that's, I think it was David G that said that. It's not mine. Um,
What is that again? Locked up,
covered
covered up?
up or sobered up.
That's great. Locked up,
Yeah.
covered up, or sober.
Um, but we never get better, we get worse. So jails, institutions, or death is what's promised of us. That's the promise of alcohol. And also because we're getting old, because we're like aging and our body's getting older, our minds are getting older. I was listening to a speaker talk about how, there was people, I think it was who was it? Anyway, it doesn't matter the name, but they're talking about how people were relapsing and they couldn't believe that, that they were so um drinking so much, the quantity and the frequency, and like he said to them, it's because from the last time you've drank has been what, 10 years till now, your body has aged significantly. So it's still working on us, even if we're not drinking, right? It's still progressing, even if we're not drinking. So we're like men who've lost their legs, they never grow new ones. So I love this sentence. Like, I feel like I'm kind of ruining the great like statements here, because every time I read the next line, it's like that just explained the line before so much better. Um, so I have lost, we are like men who have lost their legs. So that's the legs in this little example, the legs are the allergy. So the allergy are our legs. Let's think about it like that. We never grow new ones. So we'll never outgrow the allergy. We can treat the mind and the spiritual malady, but we have the allergy, and that's staying put. That's not going to change. So that's what we're like the men who've lost legs. We have that allergy. It's never going to leave us. And neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which will make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. So it talks about here, which will there's no treatment to make us alcoholics of our kind like other. Again, those are the kind of like referring to the types that I mentioned, but also the desperate variety, the hopeless variety. That's the kind that we're talking about here. And it's a permanent thing we have. We have this allergy. We're different body and mind. This is permanent. It's not going anywhere. Howard?
Well, that last point you make, it powerlessness is a permanent condition. It's like you lost your legs, you don't grow new ones. You've lost the power of choice and control, you never regain it. And that's an important point to take from what Kathy just read, is powerlessness is a permanent condition. You don't change that. And the sentence before it where it says neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment then or now. That hasn't changed from 1938 when this was written. The delusion that we can drink like other people has to be smashed. He says it in this paragraph, he said it in the previous paragraph, and again, the reason why it has to be smashed is because powerlessness is a permanent condition. Huh?
Yeah, thank you. And it says we've tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances, there's been brief recovery, always followed by a worse relapse. Like, what remedy did you try? I wrote down here like vitamins, going to meetings on just going to meetings, right? Not doing step work, not having a sponsor, being around people all the time in the fellowship so I wouldn't drink, being in a relationship, whatever thing I tried didn't work. I didn't try everything, but everything I tried didn't work. It was not a remedy. Um, or again, trying like just having cocaine or smoking weed and not like drinking. Whatever your remedy was. And it talks about, yes, there is brief recovery, but there's always this still worse relapse. Why? Because we have a progressive illness. It just told us that in the page before. And whether, again, like kind of banging home is like whether we're drinking or not, it is progressing. So if we have this illness, we're either going to treat it with a spiritual awakening or we're going to treat it with a drink. And that sounds really harsh. That sounds really scary, but that's the truth, right? I'm going to treat it by the spiritual awakening and God, or I'm going to treat it by a drink. That's just it. And I want to treat it by the spiritual awakening and God. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree that there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. And Howard's good at analogies, so we'll let him tell you this, but we're not we're pickles, we're not cucumbers. You know the way we hear that in the rooms. Do you want to
Yeah.
speak on that?
Well, yeah, once a pickle, never a cucumber. He says that there's no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. There's no going back. Why? Because powerlessness is a permanent condition. Once a pickle, never a cucumber. And keep that thought in mind, that line, once a pickle, never a cucumber, because it's got some significance when we get to the first story in the Man of 30. But I hope we can get to it today. If not, we'll talk about it next week. But that's an important expression to keep in mind because Bill uses the term normal drinker, and it means once a pickle, never a cucumber. Yeah.
Awesome. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. When I came to the program or to the fellowship, let's call it that, the one of the first couple of years I came and wasn't able to get like consistent sobriety, but I was in a book study and I was reading this big book and they read this line and I said to the guy after, but what if they do? And he was like, well, they haven't. And I can tell you it's what, 90 plus years, and they haven't. And again, reverting back to being a little sponsy, earlier we were talking about this, and I was telling her how hard, and I had a conversation about this one night, and we're like, but even if they did, would you really want it? Like, a part of me is like, well, it would be cool to see what that's like for a minute. But that couldn't even happen because we have a spiritual malady. No human aid can give us something to recover from this spiritual malady, and we have the allergy in our body. So like, it's not going to happen, Kathy. You can just, smash that delusion in pieces. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe that they're in that class. Again, real alcoholic, allergy and obsession, obsession of the mind and allergy of the body. And again, like, I don't know about you, but look at your experience. Like, even if you hadn't came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, when you're out there and you realize I'm drinking against my will and I want to stop, or you tried some of these remedies, um, you were continuing to relapse, even though you weren't in the rooms. You didn't want to drink, but you're drinking against your will. So, because why? Because it's telling me I can't see the truth, but also I don't want to um admit that I'm in that class. So I continue to drink and continue to drink and continue to drink. So whether I got here or not, I'm sure like I tried to stop and I couldn't, right? And yeah, I just love that. That explains why I couldn't come to terms. Like, I thought I was stubborn, but it was so comforting to realize that you're not going to believe. That's not like, that's normal almost, that you're a real alcoholic. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, or for a non-alcoholic. Self-deception, I've underlined this sentence. Self-deception is denial, it's deceiving self, it's lying to myself. We hear this so funny that old timers in my meeting at home used to say, denial is not a river in Egypt, it's in your head. um, but like, normal drinkers, they don't like try to, you know, have an experimentation that I'm different and I can drink normally. Like, they don't do that. Right. And I think it was one night I was in a meeting and Terry said, like, normal people don't have drunk dreams. I'm like, that's original. That's the first time I've heard that. Like, I just didn't know what, like, I thought everyone blacked out when they drank. And you guys told me when I got here, that's a blackout. Oh, right. Okay. Howard, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, by every form of self-deception and experimentation, normal drinkers never go through that process. And let's talk about that word, normal. Normal drinkers. If there was something that could be made, some medicine that could make normal drinkers out of us, why on God's earth would I do that? I've seen normal drinkers. I'm not interested in drinking like they are drinking. I like to get wasted, and there's no end to that being wasted. They don't seem to have that same end goal. Normal drinkers are not, their objective is not the same as mine. Normal drinkers, again, oh, I'm starting to feel it a bit. I gotta take it easy. And my thought is you got to drink through that because the promised land is still a few drinks beyond that on the other side. I don't want to drink like normal people. As far as I'm concerned, they are exercising alcohol abuse. To drink like they drink is alcohol abuse. They don't use it for the right purpose. So I'm not interested in normal drinkers. But it's an interesting point when Bill says, through every form of denial and experimentation, normal drinkers don't do that. Simple.
Yeah, and I bet they don't understand us, just like we don't understand two
Yeah.
drinks and go to bed. I just don't get it. Why would you start? And that was one way I tried to control the allergy, and we're going to get into the tests now in a second. But you're right. Like, I look at my drinking career and I drank to get that, like, over, like, as Howard talks about, to the promised land, like, to get where I needed to get. But I always overshot the mark, right? And like, I don't want 2 drinks. I think it's the biggest waste of money. And I
Mhm.
tried doing that. I tried it and it was so miserable. I felt worse after it because I couldn't get more alcohol. Um, okay.
And
Um,
incidentally, you mentioned self-deception and experimentation. The next paragraph, what Pat Cathy's about to read, is going to explain various forms of experimentation. We know what self-deception is. Cathy mentioned it's denial. If you're not sure what experimentation is, you're about to find out.
all right. So we have the first test here, and this is the test for the allergy. If anyone who's shown inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. So that's the first test. Go
Mhm.
drink like a gentleman or drink like a lady. Something I could never do was drink like a lady. That was the delusion that I had a martini and I was drinking in the Four Seasons and I could have 2 drinks and everything was fairy and beautiful. It never happened. It was dive bars and more after at the end. Um, so heaven knows we've tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. You bet. We
Mhm.
did. I didn't want to be at Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a resort. What is it? The court of last resort?
Yep, that's what Bill called it, the court of last resort.
Yeah. Anyway, so um so here's some of the methods we've tried. So I I would suggest you guys, if you want, to put a check mark beside it, like, and we don't need to read them out or anything, but here is what like Bill tried, I guess, or the first 100 tried these methods. So again, if I'm trying to control my drinking, like I don't have control, basically. Just bear that in mind. So here we go.
Wait, can I say, I hate
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but uh, take a look at this paragraph. This paragraph is the longest sentence in the book. Bill has a tendency to write in with run-on sentences, but this sentence takes the prize. This entire paragraph is a sentence, and it's the longest sentence in the book. Go
Thank
right
you
ahead.
for including that. Okay, so here are some of the methods we've tried. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking at home, sorry, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job. That was a big one for me. Taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with or without a solemn oath, taking more physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms. I wrote going to detox or sanitariums, rehabs. Um, anyone could or accepting voluntary commitment to rehabs, to asylums. We could increase the list ad infinitum. So without end, we could go on and on. Like I could just write, just go to meetings, just don't drink,
Mhm.
just surround myself in the fellowship. These are all the methods I've tried. Um, these are the methods we try to control our drinking. And again, if I'm trying to control it, I'm out of control. But I have quite a few checks here, yeah. Do you want to say anything on that?
No, it, it I have almost every one of them checked. In the middle of it, it says switching from scotch to brandy. Don't get too bogged down in the terminology. It's basically your choice, switching from one thing to the other. I was drinking far too much Jack Daniels, I thought. So I stopped and I started shooting dope instead, and that became a problem. So I stopped. I started eating pills like they were going out of style, and that became a problem. And what happened? I went back to Jack Daniels. We're switching seats on the Titanic. It's not the name on the chemical, it's the name on the birth certificate. So switching brands is not going to change the end result.
I remember trying some of these, like, and I didn't read the book.
Mhm.
I read the book when I came here, and I was thinking, yeah, but what are they trying to tell me here? Because I've been able to accomplish these things, but the point is, I don't need to do that not, if I'm out of control. I need to do these things, but if I'm not an alcoholic, I don't need to do these things. Um, anyway, we do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Again, have I crossed the line? And we talked about on page, let me get the page number. Sorry. On page 20 and 21, we talked about the moderate drinker, and then we talked about the hard drinker, and then we talked about the real alcoholic, which is that at some stage of our drinking career, we begin to lose all control of our liquor consumption once we start. So again, have I crossed that line? And it's a self-diagnosis illness. But here are some tests if we're unsure. Again, we did test 1. Here's test 2. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. And look at here it is, test 3. Try to drink and stop abruptly. It's the next one, sorry. Try it. This is number 4. More than once.
Because we're alcoholics, we're going to try it more than once.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Because there was something wrong the first time. We got to try it again.
And it doesn't say step over to, the nicest bar. It says the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking.
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but it is a hell of a job and it's really painful. Like I never tell people to do these. I'm going to be honest because that's like playing with people's lives. But majority of people be like, no, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, that's telling you something, right? Okay, we're almost there. You may want to, as Kathy mentioned, the paragraph before this has allergy test number 1, which is drink like a gentleman, right? Yeah.
Kathy just mentioned test number 2, which is basically go drink. That's what Bill is saying. Test number 2, go out drinking. Try and control it. Okay, that's test number 2. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Test number 3. Test number 4, try it more than once, because like I said, we're alcoholics and there's something wrong with the results of the first test. So we're going to try it again to prove that we're right. That's test number 4. If you want, since we're about to wrap up, you may want to hold on to this page and turn to page 34 for test number 5. On page 34, paragraph 1 is test number 5, which is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. Let him try leaving a liquor alone for 1 year. If he's an alcoholic and very far advanced, there's scant chance of success. That's allergy test number 5. Now, for what it's worth, the book doesn't mention it, but there is a 6th test. Marty Mann, who was one of the first women in our fellowship, most of you know who she is. Marty Mann had her own sobriety test. She said, take 2 drinks a day, average size drinks, 2 drinks a day for 30 days and stop. And you're not allowed to back them up, incidentally. Like, if you can, not drink for 5 days and then load up on 10 drinks on that last day. You can't do that. 2 normal sized drinks, incidentally.
Not that
Not
size.
this cup. Because this is the one I would use. I'll take 2 of these a day and I'll be fine. Well, the fact is, we wouldn't be fine. If I took 2 of these a day, I'd need 2 more of them a day. So in any case, that's the last test. Marty Mann's test is try 2 drinks, normal drinks a day for 30 days and quit. You won't be able to make it to the 2nd or the 3rd day. I couldn't because of the allergy. I'm going to need more than those 2 drinks. So the test would end very fast for me. But if I were able to make it to 30 days, I certainly wouldn't make it to the 31st day. And that's the last test.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I think we can wrap up there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone
have any questions, comments? Want to say anything?
Let me stop the recording.